Thank you very much. I hope I am audible.
Yes,
am I
sir.
audible?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yes, you are. We can hear
Okay,
you.
thank you
Yes,
very
sir, we
much.
can hear you.
Thank you indeed. Assalamu alaikum, marhaba. And before I speak on the concept and the principles of internal security, first of all, let me thank and congratulate Assam for holding sixth consecutive Congress. At the same time, I would like to express my very special thanks to respectable Offendum, Brigadier General Adnan Pasha, uh, and uh, and a very young scholar, Dr. Asim Uzturk, for his very continuous and constant coordination and informing us about all the changes which were taking place. Ladies and gentlemen, it was indeed my pleasure to listen to the speakers in the first session. Some very bright and brilliant ideas have been expressed. Before I come on to the actual topic, which is more of a conceptual and academic aspect, I would like to uh, share with you that the internal security situation in the Islamic world is unfortunately very bad and very poor. We are facing multiple challenges to the national security of the Muslim countries in their individual capacity, and of course, to the integrity and the sovereignty of all Muslim states uh, in the concept of the nation states and in the concept of the Islamic unity and solidarity. Because we are faced with enormous challenges where uh, the internal and external security challenges are not so exclusive as they used to be. The internal security is being caused through multiplicity of new generation warfare and through the hybrid warfare, and at times it becomes difficult to distinguish between what was traditionally called the external threat or a threat to the national security and what is an internal threat, which is internal dissension or internal political turmoil. So if we look around, I will not name the countries, including my own country. There are a number of countries which are facing very, very serious internal political turmoil, which can uh, actually be detrimental to their integrity and sovereignty. Coming on to the concept of internal security and its principles, let me share with you that the national security, as commonly understood, it means the defense against the enemy and protection of the sovereignty and independence of the state. The functions of deterring and defeating external aggression is assigned to the armed forces of the state, whereas police and other law enforcement agencies look after the internal security, including maintenance of public order. In modern times, the function of the external deterring and defeating the external aggression, as I mentioned earlier, is exclusively assigned to the armed forces of the state, whereas police and law enforcing agencies, they look after the internal security matters. We are living in a global village which is interlinked and interdependent with other states. Therefore, in my opinion, our audience should not only be the scholars and the practitioners from the Muslim world alone. We must be, and we should be talking to the international scholars, to the international students of internal security. And there are so many misgivings and misconceptions about the Islamic concept of the internal security, because there is so much of oppression in many Islamic countries, or the Muslim countries, let me call it, are the countries which are ruled by the so-called Muslim rulers, that the message which goes all over the world is that the Islam does not practice or does not preach or does not support the rule of law. Because in practice, what the international world, what the international audience, what they see going on or going around in most of the Islamic countries, that is indeed not in line with the teachings of the Islam. Excuse me. So, because of the non-Islamic practices which are followed by the rulers to perpetuate their rule, which actually violate all human rights and violate the teachings of the Islam as well, a bad name is brought to the Islam. Therefore, it is our fundamental duty that we must come up with a true concept of the Islam which upholds the rule of law, which upholds the justice and the fairness while dealing with the subjects. Ladies and gentlemen, I would wish to focus on this issue while I'm talking about the concept and the principles of internal security and public order. Such concepts, they differ considerably from one Muslim state to another state due to their peculiar historical background, social and political and social structures, excuse me, regional and geographic context. And due to their prevailing systems which differ from some kind of democratic practices to absolutely a monarchic or autocratic control in some of the countries. The concept and the principles followed by the Muslim states for ensuring their internal security and maintenance public order are phenomenally different in their character and practices. However, we find three common denominations. First, the Muslim countries are creation of a post-colonial arbitrary division with total disregard to their geographic, social, ethnic, linguistic, and historical background and the linkages amongst themselves. In many cases, such divisions are totally unrealistic, illogical, irrational, and artificial, thus superfluous and unsustainable. Sorry. These divisions, they were done by their erstwhile colonial masters to retain their control during colonial occupation and to perpetuate the neo-colonization. Second factor is the lack of participatory, consultative, and democratic system for social justice and public order, social justice and public welfare. Most Muslim countries have been ruled, and many are still being ruled by kings, monarchs, military dictators, and authoritarian despots. Such arrangements are also directly related to these countries' colonial past, as it was easy, and even today, it is easy for the erstwhile masters to control and manipulate these countries through one-man show. are a group of self-serving coteries. The third common factor is, excuse me, widespread insecurity, which is prevalent in most Muslim countries. Therefore, the Muslim states, they need to develop common strategies based on the Islamic teaching and norms to handle all such threats. They also need to cooperate with each other to strengthen their state security and collective security as well. I must appreciate the work which is being done by ASSAM. ASSAM, few years back, had conducted a congress on the national security issues as well and on the common foreign policy. In my humble opinion, without common foreign policy and without common concept of a national security, probably the application of Islamic principles of internal security will not be possible. The definition of the internal security and public order is actually ever evolving. After purported 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center, the US government had reacted violently and launched its global war on terror. Gross violations of human rights. Sorry, I got some problem of the detainees across the moderator, can you allow me about 10-15 minutes break and I can restart after the second speaker?
Okay.
Okay, let me try, no problem. The gross violation of the human rights detainees across the world, that is very well recorded. Many were detained without any legal order. In fact, there are scholars, those who feel that all such crimes need to be tried by International Criminal Court as crimes against humanity and genocide. Therefore, the Muslim countries are left with only one option, that is to draw inspiration from the Islamic concept and principles of the state management while keeping in mind the modern best practices in the domain of internal security and public order. Islamic principles of the state vis-a-vis internal security and public order can be summarized in 4 or 5 cardinal points. Let me discuss these one by one. First of all is the state responsibility. State is responsible to ensure the safety and the protection of all citizens, both from external aggression and internal disorder. For this purpose, the state must develop all necessary structures, institutions, and forces that are required from time to time. Simultaneously, Islam lays the responsibility on the citizens as well. The citizens must respect and establish order. All citizens must be treated as equals, irrespective of their religious creed, color, ethnicity, language, political affiliation, and social and economic status. And no discrimination must be done against any weak or poor. Unfortunately, in most Islamic countries today, we see that it is only the poor, those who are caught by the law enforcing agencies, and those who are powerful and those who are corrupt, they manage to violate the law. Justice must be done for all, and the rule of law must be respected. While doing so, there should be no harassment and no exploitation by the state. The public welfare that must take precedence over the state interest, and under the camouflage techniques of a state interest, public welfare must not be compromised. Some other principles are extremely important. Those, along with the state responsibility, which gives the authority to the state, accountability of those who have the ability to exercise power is extremely important, because if there is no accountability, there will be too much of oppression and too much of violation. So the government officials and institutions, they must remain accountable to the institutions which are well established and supported by the public. Sorry. While doing so, the principle of proportionality must be kept in mind. The fundamental rights and the freedom of all citizens must be respected and protected at all costs. Internal security and public order, they are interrelated and interlinked. The law enforcement, which is the state's capability and ability to apprehend and arrest criminals and prevent suspected criminals to commit crime, is extremely important for internal security operations. However, some guidelines in the keeping in view the Islamic teaching and keeping in view international best practices, that must be kept in mind so that the internal peace and order can be maintained without exercising oppression for the citizen. The proactive response by the police and law enforcement agencies is extremely important. For the swift arrest of the criminals must be made while ensuring that the complete protection is done to the witnesses. Prompt investigation and criminal intelligence and surveillance and monitoring is extremely important. High standard of judiciary and protection of the judiciary must also be ensured by the state. Ladies and gentlemen, all states must ensure the Islamic principle and international standard for the fair trial, which must be arranged for all those who are considered to be perpetrator of any crime. They must not be denied from the right of arranging their defense. To do so, one of the arrangements which had been practiced in the Muslim countries, unfortunately nowadays it's not as effective. However, it has been adopted by the Western countries, especially the Nordic countries, and that is the office of the Ombudsman. Application of the principle of accountability and proportionality is extremely important, as I have mentioned earlier. State must ensure the effective monitoring of the oversight, and the Ombudsman with complete authority should be allowed to exercise extensive oversight to reduce, not only to reduce and minimize, but to eliminate any excess and abuse of power and oppression by the state. Ladies and gentlemen, Islam is a dynamic concept and provides guidelines to all societies for all time. At times, the argument is used that the systems which are established 1400 years back, or for that matter, during other states, they are no more valid. Certainly not. The guiding principles remain same. Methods and techniques have changed. In the last presentation by ASSAM Postdoc, he has very rightly indicated the development of the technologies, and through the technologies and modern methods, by combining the Islamic principles, I'm sure new ways and means can be adopted to ensure the internal security while we are following the Islamic principles. Some very important guidelines which have been important in understanding the principle and the concept of the Islam is that the mischief, which is unrest, that is not acceptable. The Quran, in very clear words, says, Ayah 11 of the second surah, make not mischief on the earth, because the God has created the earth in a right way and in a peaceful way. Allah also says that the Muslims must obey Allah and obey the messenger and obey those who are charged with the authority among you. But unfortunately, this ayah has been misused by many rulers all along the history, and it has been quoted to justify the abuse of power. We must keep in mind that obedience of the ruler is conditional. It is not unconditional. It is conditional as long as the rulers, they obey Allah and they obey the messenger. They obey the teachings of the Islam. Their obedience is mandatory. Otherwise, Muslims are not obliged to obey the rulers, those who violate the basic teachings of Islam. Let me refer to the first sermon of the first Caliph, Abu Bakr, who said, obey me as long as I follow the commandments of Allah and the commandments and the teachings of the Prophet, and do not obey me if I violate these teachings. Quran also says that the oppression is worse than killing. Therefore, the oppression must be avoided. The Quran very clearly says that he who kills a person or he murders a person for spreading the mischief in the land is equivalent to the one who has killed the complete humanity. Therefore, we must keep in our mind that it is the responsibility of the state to protect the citizens, and it is the responsibility of the citizens to respect the laws and the rules and the regulations which are prepared by the state. Quran also says that whosoever saved the life, it would be as if he saved the life of the complete mankind. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say that Quran lays very strict punishment for those who create mischief in the world. But simultaneously, it lays very strict conditions for the rulers that they must not transgress while they are implementing certain rules and regulations for the effective control in the society. To end and to conclude, I would just like to thank ASSAM once again, and I would like to recommend that the findings and the conclusions, and of course the recommendations of the ASSAM Congress, they should be shared with the OIC, with all members, for evaluating and for communicating it to other Muslim states, so that a jointly prepared and developed principles and guidelines for the internal security can be prepared, which are implemented by all states. Simultaneously, these recommendations must be shared with the think tanks and the scholars and the universities, so that the scholars can give their opinion and this subject can be explored further. The OIC should appoint an OIC ombudsman for human rights and internal security and public order. And in case the citizen in a particular country, they cannot find the remedy to the excesses and the abuses done by the state, they should be in a position to launch a complaint or to approach the OIC ombudsman. The OIC may also constitute a committee of the Ministers of Internal Affairs, those who should oversee the national policies pertaining to the internal security and public order. Ladies and gentlemen, just to say last few words, the Islamic Convention on Internal Security and Public Order is extremely important. Unfortunately, we do not have any convention on this issue. If a convention is developed by the OIC with the recommendations of this conference, I'm sure Islamic countries will be able to implement the basic principles and the concept of the Islam while ensuring the internal security in their countries. Thank you indeed. If there are any questions and queries, I'm available right now or at the end of the session. Once again, let me congratulate ASSAM for arranging such forums and for an organization, the conceptual discussion on various aspects which are very pertinent for the Islamic world. Thank you indeed. Teşekkür.
Doktor Shahid Hashmat Bey'e çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Çok muhteşem bir sunum yaptı.
Dr. Shahid Hashmat, thank you very much. That was some excellent presentation. Thank you very much. And you had really excellent sentences. Yes, you're right. We live in a global village. And that was a beautiful sentence. Secondly, the interesting sentence of yours for me was that internal security and external security are no more distinguishable. In fact, now they are very closely interlinked. And you also talk about one main place of internal security. This is about the roles and obligations of the rulers as regards internal security. And there are some responsibilities for the rulers and for the citizens, and everything have to be in place. And justice and public order, that is an important correlation. Internal security is not an isolated concept. Well, you are right. Internal security is based on justice. These are an integral whole, and the monitoring and prosecutions and proper penalization of the criminals. These are very important elements of the system. Well, thank you very much. That was a very satisfactory presentation. In fact, you had very limited time, but I suggest and recommend all the participants that please play back Dr. Shahid's presentation and listen to that once and once again. Thank you very much. So,
my apologies for taking a little more time. I had some problem with the throat and there was some interruption. Please do excuse me for that.